Live from Las Vegas, The Wasted Hour. 30 Fannish Minutes with your host, Arnie Katz.
And we're back with another segment of The Wasted Hour. This is really my favorite part of the show. I always enjoy meeting new people, and this is the part of the show where we have a first-time guest. And now, for the first time on The Wasted Hour, I'd like to welcome Bertie Mae Coggins, the Grand Exhausted Ruler of the mysterious and bewildering Order of the Daughters of Cleopatra. Welcome, Bertie.
Why, thank you, sir. Your face does look a bit familiar, though.
Wait a minute. Turn your head. Yeah, okay. Yes, I do know you. And since we're here, I thought we might want to discuss tonight something kind of on the positive track. Fannish readings for well-read fans. And I know you believe very much in the literature of fandom as being important in the culture. Why don't you tell us, well, what book, if you had to recommend one book, one fanzine that a fan should read to start with, what would that be?
Well, I suppose if you come right down to it, the thing I'd recommend is that they publish a fanzine and then read their own work. They'd get more return out of that than they'll get from their first fanzine.
Well, that's possibly true, but I thought you wanted to talk about the great books.
Well, it's true. Fanzines are full of things that need to be read in order to inculcate one into the arts of fandom. If I had to pick just one thing to tell a neo-fan to read, I would probably recommend Bob Bloch's The 8 Stages of Fandom. It has every type of fan in it. I could find myself in it very easily, and it made me understand that there are phases to go through in becoming a fan. It helped me immensely when I was a neo-fan.
I read The 8th Stage of Fandom the same night that I read two other rather seminal works, Sweet Idiocy, which is Francis Towner Laney's memoirs of 1940s Los Angeles fandom, and also The Enchanted Duplicator by Walt Willis and Bob Shaw, which I would still consider the prose epic of fandom. But of those three, the most accessible and immediate is certainly The 8th Stage of Fandom. It's composed of many short selections by Robert Bloch, a great humorist, and it not only introduces a lot of the elements of fannishness, such as his camaraderie and ongoing insult session with Bob Tucker, in a way that makes them very appealing. It's also, when you get to the end of the book and you notice that all of the articles originally appeared in fanzines, it really tells you that fanzines are very much part of the core of fandom, carrying the message of fandom from generation to generation. I naturally also wanted to mention Harry Warner's two fan history books, All Our Yesterdays.
Upside Down.
What's upside down? Oh, All Our Yesterdays and A Wealth of Fable, both of which are still available. But my favorite is actually The Immortal Storm by Sam Moskowitz, which is much less of a history and much more of a memoir. Sam wrote it all for a fanzine called Fantasy Commentator, published by A. Langley Searles in the 40s, and again currently after a lapse of about 40 years. And it was published originally by a fan-owned publishing company, Advent Publishers, and republished by Hyperion Press in the 70s. The thing about Sam's book is that while Harry Warner's fan histories and Rob Hanson's history then are better if you're looking for a specific piece of information. Sam really had a knack for telling a story. When you read The Immortal Storm, you almost feel like you're reading a space opera.
I'd like to refer back to Ah Sweet Idiocy. I disagree with you on that one. I don't think that a fan should read that until they're really solidly into fandom. It's such a heartbreaker. It's so downbeat. Don't you find it a risky book to recommend to a neofan?
No, because I think one of the problems that I see in fandom is that fandom is becoming a tea party. And I think it's good to read someone looking at fandom with all of its pluses and minuses. When I read Ah Sweet Idiocy, and something I've done several times and try to do every year or so, the part of the book that I find most interesting and compelling are the early chapters about Laney finding fandom, about Laney getting a copy of The Outsider and Others and reading it, sitting in his bathroom, reading it all night, and waking up to find that his hindquarters had fallen asleep and he had fallen off the commode. I think that those stories tell you a lot about fandom. I think Ah Sweet Idiocy tells you a lot about the way fandom was conducted on a day-to-day basis in a very interesting place and time, Los Angeles during the war. I also think that something like Ah Sweet Laney, which was published last year, edited by Robert Lichtman and published by Pat Versey, is a particularly good complement to Ah Sweet Idiocy. It consists of a very nice selection of shorter pieces. And again, I think that fandom can really use a piece like I Am a Great Big Man right now.
Well, I agree with you that fandom right now is too much of a love festival. I think that's a strange thing to say, so I'd like to elaborate. Right now, a criticism of anyone, friend or foe, is looked down upon so much that even hard-hearted insurgents like me fear to be too honest in their opinions. I find myself censoring myself all the time in the things that I write about fans and what's happening in fandom. Not that I'm always angry, but when something happens that is noteworthily improper, I think that fans should be honest about it in the best traditions of insurgency.
Well, I think that the insurgents believed that truth was the most important element and that fandom should be true to its own standards. I don't think we always are, and I think we also have found that our brand of fandom is sometimes in collision with other sub-fandoms that take a much more mercenary, competitive, and exploitative view of fandom than we do. And it's important for us to insist on our standards and that our fandom, be our way. It may not be the only way, in fact, it certainly isn't, but it's our way.
Well, what you say makes sense, but I would like to see more insurgency in operation now than there actually is. We're very sensitive in our old age, and we're very sensitive about hurting others in our old age.
Well, I think a little sensitivity is a good thing, don't you?
Well, certainly it's a balancing act. I believe in balancing the true love I feel for fandom against the need to be honest and outspoken. And sometimes I'm one way just in reaction to someone else being the opposite, because both elements have to be in fandom.
Absolutely. I think that we need true fannishness and its spirit of cooperation, myth-making, group play, as it were. And I think we need insurgentism, which holds up the mirror of criticism and also the mirror of satire to what we do. We don't want to get too full of ourselves. I want to thank you, as always, Joyce, for being my guest. We'll be back very soon with another segment of The Wasted Hour.